Tonight, on the Michael Show, Shadow EMS Minister Alfie Jedd, all Liberal, Irish-loving Killian Clark, Brexit lover leader of the Progressives, SLLP, and on the board is Barbie-loving former Prime Minister TBU. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Oh,
Alright, geez, guys, you sound a bit more energetic. Christ.
Hello.
Alright then, well, thank you very much for that. Anyway, so, as we've seen recently, the government has collapsed with Conservatives leaving the coalition government, leaving Labour on just 22 seats. And as the Speaker of the House of Commons has recently announced, a vote of no confidence has been scheduled for this Friday. So, what do we think about this? Let's start with you, TBU, who was in the government.
well, it was just coming, really. I mean, just throughout the week, we just kind of saw a deterioration of communication between, the governing parties and the Prime Minister. You know, especially with the Conservative end, I was discussing with, ministers who are in the Conservative Party. They were concerned that they didn't get a response from the Prime Minister within the week, or they did. It was like one sentence long, which we just thought, that's unacceptable. The Prime Minister needs to be there. She needs to be communicating with her ministers, and she needs to be at the forefront. So, by Saturday night, the bill had already failed the Commons due to poor attendance in the government. And we just decided, you know what, this country deserves better than this, and we need to pull out the government.
Right, yeah, you know what? I totally agree with you, TBU. I think the actions of Reba Astor have been just disappointing and definitely unexpected of how a prime minister should act. I don't think we've actually ever had such a worse prime minister in the history of this country. Jamie, leader of the Progressives, you've obviously been very critical of the government since the very start. What do you think about the Labour governing with just 22 seats?
I think it's a disgrace, and I think Reba should resign and call on a general election. I think if the people were to vote again, they would definitely not vote for the Conservatives, or they would definitely not vote for Labour after that shambolic show they put on for the past couple of weeks. What have they achieved? Nothing. And they've upset a whole load of people, including their own voters. Reba's silenced everyone in her party that opposed her. And I'm actually very surprised that Marcus actually listened to his backbenchers and just didn't, sack them off too. Good for them for actually standing up for them. It took them long enough, but they came round to their senses.
Yeah, Marcus is he's definitely a good man. He's not like someone to suppress his own MPs. He's someone who definitely focuses on self-improvement wherever he can get it. But yeah, it seems like this coalition did upset a lot of people. And it is disappointing that the Conservatives did coalition, but it's not like I don't think it's like they had a choice, really, was it?
No, I wouldn't
The
say the
king.
Conservatives had a choice.
Well, the king was threatening to deregister two parties. But Slurp, were you approached by anyone from the Royal
I was
household about this?
I was approached by Labour, and
You were
they were begging for a coalition agreement. So I gave them a pretty simple agreement, and they said they were waiting for Reba Astor to get back. 3 hours later, no reply, no nothing. That was the last comment I got. They were waiting for Reba. 3 hours later, the coalition was announced, and it was completely like what, what is going on? That was a complete what? WTF moment.
Right, so you're telling me that Labour went to your party, which is known for wanting to get rid of these in real life parties like the Conservatives and Labour, and they were asking you for a coalition.
Yep, they said, whatever you want, and I gave them my demands, and there was pretty much all of my reform sections from my manifesto, and I went through their manifesto and got rid of, a couple of things that I didn't agree with them. But they just said, okay, we'll just send this off to Reba, and Reba, not a reply else. That was it.
Well, you know what? That is definitely desperate from Labour, willing to coalition with a party that wants to just get rid of their brand just for the sake of power. That is definitely really something. But were you like approached by the Electoral Commission or anyone from the royal household about having your party get deregistered in the next election?
No, you see, the way they said it was that the party that refused to cooperate would be deregistered, and we were obviously willing to cooperate with anyone. Let's not forget a coalition was not the only thing on the table here. They could have went for supply and confidence, or whatever it's called, or they could have just went and did solo and sort of convinced everyone else to sort of back them. And I think that's probably would have been the far better approach, to be honest, because then they wouldn't have, upset a lot of people. And I think the other two parties, or the three parties even, would have been, happy to get like something that they didn't like with the Labour Party's manifesto just completely removed from the King's Speech. It would have been better for everyone. We wouldn't be in this mess today, and we probably would have had a Labour government for the next 2 months.
And I'm assuming that the Progressives are going to be voting for no confidence in the government this Friday.
Of course.
All right then. Well, yep. Sorry, carry on.
We had no confidence in this government from the beginning. How could a left-wing party and a right-wing party, actually govern the nation? And as we've seen, they can't, because there's nothing of significance been done in this past 3 weeks.
Well, you know what? I have to say that it actually has been done before. It was just after the whole Milner and Radcliffe scandal, where Binney, after getting I think 16 seats, I believe, in one of the elections, he coalitioned with the Labour Party, which was being led by Dina Heathcote at the time, and I wasn't part of that government. I don't even think I was really into politics during that, but seemed like it was a bit of a success, and actually the Conservatives ended up losing seats after that, but Labour soared right through, but they were just short of a majority, I think, in the next election. Killian, even though you're just an Irish puppet, what do you think about all this?
Of course. Well, look, as an Irish puppet, as any Irish puppet, I think I'm disappointed with the formation of the Grand Coalition. I mean, it was doomed to fail from the start, right? When you're coerced into forming an agreement like this, it's out of fear and not out of initiative, I suppose. So I think what we're seeing here is a real culmination of that failure. It's they're governing to stay in power, right? It's little governance to keep their parties registered. That's by any measure not successful. And I think to try and keep the blame away from Marcus, though, that's exquisitely ridiculous. I mean, Marcus absolutely consented to the formation of government. Marcus is complicit
No, I'm
in
not
this failure.
denying that. I'm not denying that. Of course, he consented to forming a government.
Certainly, yeah.
He did it, and so did Labour. They both did it for the sake
Right.
of stability. But what I'm saying is, and this is what I said last night, is that Reba was treating the Conservatives very unfairly from the start, with her disappearing for days and not communicating with her coalition partner, and especially with Labour's attendance absolutely shockingly low. You've got the Reclaim Party and I believe the Progressives. Their attendance has actually been very great. I've seen them scrutinise the government. They have done it very efficiently. I'd say that it is quite embarrassing that the parties were not able to fight back. What was it, last Saturday when they lost some votes on government bills?
Yeah.
We failed 2 bills.
An item of legislation failed.
Can I
Incredibly
just add,
embarrassing for the government to failed.
can I just add in there? It's been how many hours since the since the Conservatives pulled away, and there's still been no replacements for the positions that the Conservatives have left. That just proves
There
how
won't be.
inactive Reba is.
There won't be, and I'll tell you why, Jamie, because Reba has probably disappeared for a few days again, and we probably won't see those positions filled by.
Well,
It's
she
gonna
was
be
last
too
online
late.
Saturday. She wasn't online on Friday. She was online on Saturday, so we probably won't see her again until Saturday, and by that time the government will be over.
Well, I guess we'll just see if Labour can get their attendance up at the votes of no confidence, because there is a chance that they could beat it. But knowing
There isn't.
the current Labour Party at the moment, it's very unlikely that they're going to beat this vote of no confidence. I don't even think Reba is going to even show up
She
to
won't. It's on
PMQs.
Friday. She didn't
Well,
attend last Friday.
I think she's
Well,
got,
from what
I
I've
think she's
been
got a
told,
Justin Bieber concert.
well, from what I've been told, Michael, is at least 6 Labour MPs will be voting for the motion. So I think it's game over.
Well, hold on. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I think someone has already mentioned this, but surely they should have said that on Friday when they knew they couldn't get sacked.
They should have, absolutely, but I've not got names regarding whose, but I've got to confirm there's at least six. So it's maybe they've not said their names publicly, but there's I think at least six who will vote for the motion on. But it won't matter anyway. Reba, she's too inactive to replace them, and only the leader can actually replace MPs anyway. So it's not like they're in any threat of getting replaced. There's no one there to replace them.
You know what really puzzles me about all this? It's that you've got Barron, who's leading a party that's splitting from the Labour Party, and you've got ministers and MPs apparently going with him. But how comes they're not trying to remove Reba Asta as leader? Surely there's some sort of a process laid out in the Labour Party constitution that says that they can remove Reba Asta through a vote.
Well, you'd certainly think so, wouldn't you? I mean, I thought she would have been removed after the poor election results, let alone this. She won, what was it, the two votes she won the first election by one vote and the second one by 3 votes. That's not a mandate. It's not a mandate to win. In both of these elections, she was touted to get absolute majority. She was told that she would win 30 plus majorities in the House of Commons, but no, she got one seat above the Conservative each time. So to me, that's not a great victory. Even during my election, where she was the leader of the opposition, she was then again touted to defeat myself, and defeat us, our Conservatives, and she didn't because, for one, again, Labour bottled it. And I think it comes down to the leader. She won't accept the failures, and that's why the party won't move on. I have respect for Reba, and I think the Conservatives went, we'll work with you because you said you will. You said you'll compromise. You said you'll do this, you'll do that, and you'll work with us. But we didn't see that. We saw inactivity. We saw lack of respect, and we saw, Conservative policies get really trampled on. And, I think that's unfair to us. And I think that's why we withdrew in the end, because that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Well, can I just butt in here? I know exactly why Reaper hasn't been removed. And I think the CPS, they were looking into it, and the report of corruption. But
yes, this is about the rumours of the General Secretary of the Labour Party not going through with votes of no confidences.
Yeah, there's definitely something fishy going on. I mean, the CPS are looking into it. I know the CPS are after myself. I can't speak much, but there's something fishy going on, and the CPS are looking into it. There's potentially something dodgy going on, and I think if it's proven that there is, that is disgraceful. Because the fact that party
is incredibly vague, and it's probably like that intentionally.
It
but
was.
For me, it's pretty black and white.
Became leader.
But there's lots of loopholes in it.
I mean, it's madness to think, as General Secretary of your party, you're in charge of spreading the message of your party, and that current message is that the Labour Party is possibly corrupt. It's doing very badly right now in government. It hasn't been communicating with its partners, so therefore the Labour Party is being labelled as an unreliable organisation. And yet, what he's possibly doing is that he's suppressing these votes of no confidences being motioned by MPs in the Labour Party. It's damaging his party to even try and keep Reba Asta as leader. So why is he not even going through with this? Why is he not saying, Reba, you need to resign, you're doing a terrible job and you're damaging the party? What does everyone think?
Well, personally, I think. Sorry, I'll let you go first, Jamie.
Well, there's not really a reason why they can't replace Reba. They have other leaders, people with leadership potential in the party, like Sid. He would make a great leader instead of Reba because he's actually active and he's experienced.
I think Sid honestly would make a great leader. He joined the same term as I did in term 60 House of Commons. He's a great guy. He's a great leader. Someone like that could take over. But I think what you're seeing, what happened when Mason resigned, is the cult of personality form. A lot of Labour MPs who were in the party for a while got chucked out in favour of people, who necessarily weren't in Labour before. I think that was a big problem for Labour because they lost a lot of the people who made the party. But then, as much as I have respect for Steve and Andre, they're great people. I think what she did was damaging to the party because they lost a lot of the people that made the party again. sure, they weren't as successful, but if she could have trained them up, kept them as backbenchers, they would have been fine. I think that's the problem they face now. Who is going to replace her? Because I don't know.
No, I think, yeah, you're right. I think actually, if Scripted Sid was leading the Labour Party at the time when Andre Hodge was there, you definitely could have won and definitely could have removed the Conservatives out of government. But yeah, that is very unfortunate. We're currently going through with this. So, Jamie, what do the Progressives think about the next term? Is it possible that are you open to coalitioning with let's say the Conservatives or Reclaim, or if Labour change their leaders, let's say Scripted Sid, would you consider coalitioning with any of them?
Well, our main coalition partner that we will sort of aim to sort of go in with would probably be the Reclaim Party. We've worked hand in hand in opposition, and we've a great relationship between our two parties. And I think, combined with their experience and my policies, we could definitely make a great government. Labour would probably be at the very, very far bottom of the list. Not a chance. We know we've tried that before. And
Even if they change leaders to, let's say, Scripted Sid, would you consider it?
well, even if they change leaders in this next election, the writing is on the wall for the party. Everyone's going to remember what they did in this term. So, it's probably too soon to even consider a coalition with Labour.
Right. Okay. What about you, TVU? I know you can't really speak on behalf of Marcus, but would the Conservatives consider coalitioning with any of the parties again next term?
Like, he categorically rule out Labour. I think that's safe to assume. Obviously, I won't speak for Marcus. It's his choice at the end of the day. We'll work with any party who's willing to work with us to deliver a better country. With respect to each other's parties, but that's going to work out what kind of results. That's too early to say. But I can categorically rule out we will not be working with Labour again.
Police emergency.
Warning Marcus, violent, kidnap and robbery.
Open the door!
Taser, get over here now!
Don't start resisting.
Yeah.
Don't start resisting, mate. Derbyshire's traffic cops, chasing criminals in the heart of the country.
Stay where you are! Stay where you are!
Policing 1,000 square miles.
Get out! Get out now!
Yeah, they're crossing the southbound carriageway at Paz. We've got them inside.
Dealing with the dangerous and desperate. In life and death situations.
There's a smell of gas, so can you go inside your house?
Please stay where you are!
Under pressure. And under threat.
He was sat with that behind his back.
Every day is a new challenge.
All right then, Gillian. What do you think of the Labour Party then?
Look, I have a lot of friends in different parties, right? Particularly Mason Cathcart, a member of the government. He's all the integrity in the world. But what we're seeing in Labour is a group of spineless individuals. I mean, all the experienced politicians we've seen clamber behind Reba Astor, people like Andre Hodge, they've departed. They've completely fled. And you know what? I don't even blame them. But the people who are still there forming, split branches, trying to change the branding and escape the consequences of their actions, those are the ones that are spineless, and those are the ones that are going to be punished when they face the electorate on Saturday, I believe, the vote of confidence going forwards. I seriously think there's very little to be optimistic about in the Labour Party today, and I think a vote for them is completely futile.
All right then. Well, how about this? How about we just blame Mason for this entire mess? How about that?
I agree.
I've considered that. I have completely considered that. The only issue is you cannot blame ginger people for their actions. Simply they can't control it. It's nature to them. You can't really place the blame for them on that.
All right then. Well, let's see here. So we've got 3 people on this panel willing to blame Mason for this entire mess, and then one person, which is you, Killian, not willing to blame Mason because he's ginger and ginger people's actions are unpredictable.
Yeah, they can't control it. It's in their nature.
Fair enough. This is what the panel has decided. Mason is at fault. All right, then let's move on to the next topic. Banning in real life parties. So, Jamie, obviously you and the Progressives have advocated for banning in real life parties. I believe we spoke briefly on it during election night. How about you expand on that? Have you got any new ideas about, relating to banning in real life parties, or have you scaled it back since?
Oh no, we're just going to go full steam ahead, banning the whole lot. But there does need to be some sort of what's the word, caveat to that, so that you don't just ban simple words like the green. So obviously simple words, I'm just going to leave them up to EC discretion, and I'm hoping Sangus, doesn't be stupid with it. But the rule to that is, if you do get, like, say, the Green Party, you cannot use any of their IRL branding, and that's fair enough, because it's all about sort of creating your own sort of brand. The Green Party, you can have a red party, the blue party. It's not unfair. It's not fair to ban the Green Party if that's the case. But you have to come up with your own sort of branding, your own logo, your own sort of slogans, your own sort of poster design. That's kind of the whole idea. Your own sort of policies. That's
Right.
kind of like
Right.
creating
Okay. So,
individual party identity.
so what you're saying is we can have real life parties as long as they don't use any of their brands in real life.
So long as it's a minor party and it's
needs to
not the
get a
Labour
new
Party, the
logo.
Conservative Party.
Oh.
What?
What did you say about the Conservatives and Labour?
Oh, so long as it isn't so long as it's only like a minor party, and it's like, so small, or like so like unrecognizable. So, like
But the Green Party is recognisable.
yeah, but they are recognizable. But
What
it's just an
about
example.
Reclaim? They're led by that actor.
Well, Reclaim, we'll have to sort of come to an agreement.
He's on GB News.
Well, we'll have to sort of come to an agreement in Parliament. We haven't really discussed this much at all because nobody seems to be on board in it. But we'll have to look into sort of each sort of party individually, each real life party individually. I know there's people that are sort of, they don't want to ban every party because some parties are just too basic to ban. This was discussed, I think, last night on GB News. I think it was. I think Thomas and Mason were speaking about it, not banning, every real life party, but definitely banning their branding is sort of what the main aim here is, and banning sort of all the big sort of major well-known parties in real life.
Right. Okay then. Interesting.
That's
What
a
about you,
silly
TB?
idea.
What do you, Killian? Shut
Yeah,
up.
that's a
Shut up,
silly idea.
please.
Sorry.
I was speaking to TBU. Thank you. Don't
Thank you,
interrupt
Michael.
me. Thank you. So I'm so sorry about that, TB. I'm really sorry that Killian interrupted you. Please carry on.
Well, I think it's honestly an interesting proposal. Obviously, I speak from the Conservative perspective, and obviously we use, a very well-known brand. And I think obviously that does help us in an election, because there will be people who are Conservative in real life, or it's just people who recognise the brand and will go, oh, I'll vote for them. Obviously, it does help us.
That is the exact reason why this proposal is needed, because it gives
Hold
extra
on a second.
advantages to
Hold
other
on.
parties.
If we take that into account, right, the Conservatives in real life are doing terribly in the polls. They consistently have been low, but the not past 8 months anymore, but the previous 6 months we had of the Conservatives, they've always been getting majorities because of their campaigners, like Do Not Care Mark when he was in it. But the Conservatives in real life, at the same time, whilst the Lego Conservative Party was in power, the real life Conservatives have always been low in the polls. So is there really that factor that plays in it? Because the Conservatives have, there's been times when the Conservatives and Labour got lower seats than new parties that nobody's heard of, like what was Nafis's party, Reform?
Reform, but it's also a real life party. But he worked really, really hard to sort of build that brand up from the ground up.
There's also the High Tories as well. Not your High Tories, but Blokeston's High Tories. They did quite well. And there was UKIP a few years back. They did quite well. So does it really have to do with real life brands and what they're doing currently?
Oh yeah, because I mean, you heard Jay Chan say it. He only joined the Conservatives because they are the Conservatives. That also happens in other cases.
There's definitely people, I'm talking to the Conservative Party who joined because they're Conservatives in real life. You can definitely find that out. I think it comes down to individual kind of perspective on this. obviously, when I speak in kind of this proposal, it's not obviously Marcus's view, it's my kind of view on it. I think it's an interesting proposal. I think it's something that could be considered. You know, kind of politics is kind of, there's not much really life in it. If you got something where you say, oh, you kind of really like parties, I mean, they kind of people come with their own imaginations and go, let's make a new brand here. And maybe someone will come up with take a European kind of brand and make it British, for example, or you could say for a Conservative Party, for example, you could make it based on say a German, like the example, like the Christian Democrats. You can make that kind of example in Britain. I think it introduces ingenuity and creativity. So it's definitely a point that could be considered. I mean, I'm open to discussing it, but that would have to be a Conservative policy, decided by Conservative policymakers.
Yeah, and it is also about what parties have for their resources. Like
Yeah.
Nafilis's Reform Party, they had graphic designers, they had a great cabinet team being proposed. So they did quite well off that. I remember, Conservatives. There were times when there were leaders like James Aitchison. They didn't really have graphics people, and they got poor results. They got a poor outcome, because their graphics weren't appealing. Their team wasn't that appealing. So it really all depends on who's working in the party.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a factor to consider in it, but there will also be the factor that people do associate parties with the real life brands. I think that's definitely part of it. But as you say, you're completely right. It does come down to campaigners. Last time we saw, well, one of the first elections with Reba, not the last one, the one before that. He had people in the cabinet who were very experienced, but they still didn't get enough votes to form a majority government. So that does add to your point there. Yeah, people do have experienced cabinets and they have maybe a strong brand, but it really is maybe down to the campaigners in some situations.
It's a lot harder for a creator, like sort of a minor, like a a brand new, like what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? Made up sort of brand. It's sort of a lot harder for a made up brand to get a lot of recognition, especially in this time, because you vaguely know what Labour's going to stand for. You vaguely know what the Conservatives are going to stand for. Whereas, for the likes of progressives, you might look and think, well, what do they stand for? And we've made it quite clear what we stand for in our manifesto. Our manifesto was basically like policy points and on what we sort of understood.
Well, hold on, but you have Reclaim right now who got 12 seats this election, which isn't a bad result for a first-time party. And to be fair, yes, they were registered, but then they suffered quite a lot of damage when their leader Ben got banned by the UK, so that damaged their reputation and their brand. And then it collapsed shortly afterwards because Hunter was one of the people doing their graphics. Then he defected to the Conservatives, and then Charles Henley, their previous chairman, resigned. But then they made a comeback this election. They got 12 seats, which isn't a bad result for a first-time party. And last term, when the Progressives under Penguin coalition with Labour, what was it? They got 10 seats, was it, in a 50-seat parliament? That isn't a bad result for a first-time party. So it does take, time for, I will admit, it does take time for small parties to build up their reputation. That's the same thing with every other party, like the Labour, for example. After Dinar Heathcote, they were down in the polls. They were just unelectable for months, and they made a comeback because Andre Hodge came, and so did Steve. They fixed the branding of the Labour Party, and they did surprisingly, or not surprisingly well, I suppose, because then the Conservatives had some scandals.
They underperformed, Michael, is what they did. I'm sorry, but they underperformed.
Yeah, well, the scandals definitely helped Labour, but they got to a point where, they were actually over the Conservatives. They got more seats than them. It was great, although they could have definitely gotten more seats if Reba wasn't leading them. Yeah, these building brands, it takes time. You have to build your brand if you're starting a business. You've got promotions to do, you've got marketing to do, all that stuff. And once it's built up, you become a household name. Everyone knows what you do. Everyone knows what you stand for. So maybe it's not just about these well-known parties taking all the votes because everyone knows what they are. Maybe it's all about these parties build their reputations and their branding.
Well, that's
do you
easy
think,
to do when
Jeremy?
they can just copy paste the brand from real life. It's all about creating new life. You know, we've seen the Conservatives and Labour and all these other real life parties over however many years, and whereas we've only seen sort of these created parties come and go really quickly, and that's mainly because after the person who sort of created that party goes, well then nobody really knows what that party stands for. Whereas with Labour and the Conservatives, you roughly know what that party's going to stand for.
You know what, that is a good point, because after, well, maybe, I don't know if this is a good example, but when Naflis left Reform as leader and prime minister, and then Reba took over, I think that was surely her first time leading a party, wasn't it?
I think it might have been.
Yeah. So that is a good point. You've got Naflis, who really personalised on his campaign, a very presidential way of how he ran his campaign. And then after he left, nobody knew what Reform really stood for, and then they dropped all the way down to like 5 seats or something. Well, Killian, we haven't heard from you about this. What do you think of all this?
Look, I think the idea of banning real life parties in order to make way for fictitious parties is a really far-fetched idea from SLLP.
It's not
And I have great
far-fetched.
respect for
There's
you.
lots of
No,
people
it
in
is.
the
It is. It
there's lots of
absolutely
people in
is.
the
Look,
UK Discord
I
that
have great
just
respect for you.
I
Seriously,
won
I
7
do. I have
seats
great
because myself
respect for you and your
supported.
ideas. But unfortunately, I think it's such a defeatist remark to make, to sort of say, well, look, these real life, they have such a huge advantage. There's no way these, fictitious brandings are going to make a way in British politics. That's such a defeatist,
Have you looked at
perspective on this
Malaysia? They
issue.
don't have real life parties.
Really? Do they
Pessimistic
not?
view.
Well, I'm
Well,
glad
What
this is
you're
the
saying.
United Kingdom. It's very pessimistic. It's very negative to come into this political system and try and ban real life parties. I
I've been
think
on about this
you're
for
right
years.
on
People
one
have been on
thing.
about this for years. It's time
I
to
think
do
you're
it.
right on one thing, and that is real life parties do have an advantage. But it is so insignificant compared to the votes that they have gained from their policy. And you say that you have I suppose, a
Well, how
view
did the Conservatives get
that
20 seats? Look at their policies. What were their policies? It was
because
all check.
they have posters being churned out. They're up against Reba Astor, a huge political failure. I mean, it's such a defeatist perspective to have on this. And I understand you want to be innovative and bring new ideas to the table, but perhaps this is not the correct one. Okay,
Well, this is the
banning
correct way.
real life.
Well,
There's lots of people that agree
hold
with
on,
us
if
in
I
the UK
if I
Discord.
just may
Just go and ask anyone.
interject before any other point is made, I would just like to say that the Conservatives do also have David D. Rothschild, who is very popular in
Yeah.
the UK community. He owns what's that engineering company?
RBC.
RAC. He owns Greggs. He's known for a lot of things, and the Conservatives have him.
Had
Very
him.
powerful.
He's
Yep.
gone now.
Oh, well, yeah, that is true. They had him. He was a very
When they won
powerful
the 20 seats.
asset for the Conservatives because of his, branding and imaging. But yeah, carry on, Jamie. What were you saying?
What was I saying there? I've lost track now.
Oh,
Well,
okay. Well,
look,
I guess is there anything else to say on this? Because we've got another topic to move on to.
yeah,
Well,
I
I
just
think
think it's a very defeatist perspective. I genuinely think coming into this and acting as though a significant portion of votes are because of their real life branding is
well, it's
so
not just
wrong. You're
well, it's
focusing
not
on the
just that. It's
negative.
all about creating new life for politics. Politics is dying. You've the same two
No,
parties basically running the country for the past
new
however many
colours and
years,
new
right?
logos is not going to breathe life into the political
It will
system.
because
That's
it'll
wrong.
spark creativity.
No, look,
It
I
definitely
think
will.
you could. I've seen more creativity in a preschool drawing art. I don't think new branding and new colours is going to
Well,
breathe
no,
life into this
creating
political
a new
system.
party is definitely not something easy to do. Look at the progressives.
It certainly is. I mean, you just put a flower on a yellow background, if we're being honest here, and
But
chose
look
a
at
name
but
that's
that
by
was
many
far
countries.
better than the one we had before.
I'm sure it was, but that doesn't make it any better in comparison to other parties. It's seriously,
Look at the likes
it's
of the Imperial
demeaning and
Party. Look at the likes
it's
of the
really
High Colour Party.
reductive. The Imperial Party, well, that was actually a step up. That was purple, so we're entering new ground here. But seriously, to try and sit here and reduce the political system to just new colours and new logos and new branding makes new policy. It doesn't
Well,
work
go and
like
ask
that.
someone in the
Just make
UK
new
Discord server.
policy.
Many people
Just
will
make
agree
new
with this.
policy
That
I
with
it's
real
love
life
Tibby's
branding.
mum.
it's all about creating something new instead of just sticking with the status quo, which is obviously not working and
Yeah.
is obviously dying.
You're not
I
going to
think,
create something
especially with.
by changing
I'll
What?
let you continue.
What, Tibby? All right. Okay.
Well,
Well, you know
basically,
what?
do you want me to continue or what?
Yes, I just said continue, Tibby.
Oh, right, okay.
For
Well, you
goodness
said
sake.
move on.
Oh, you
Yeah, I think
Scottish
what
people.
James isn't actually correct. parties have done, and they're not really like plans in the past, have done really well, such as the High Tories, such as Imperial. They've done really well because people actually connect with that kind of new image. And I think
but
it
the
could
basis of
succeed.
their policy and their cabinet, that's not the basis of their branding at all. And if it is,
Because
it's a huge, really insignificant portion of their vote.
It may not be a large proportion, but I think it's definitely, if you want to consider bringing kind of new people or new ideas, it's something you can consider. Because if you're the Conservatives, you're going to think, oh, they're anti-immigration or they're anti-boats, whatever, because we associate the Conservatives with real life.
That's
actually what they
Roblox
did in their campaign. They were campaigning.
Yeah,
that's
I mean, that's
Roblox
true.
politics. It's not necessarily, you don't have to stick to those party boundaries. You can go write a new constitution. You can put new values into the Conservative branding. It's so defeatist to sit here and say, well, because we're not
tried that
I don't think it's defeatist. I think it's just proposing new ideas.
All right, look. Let's just admit that, okay, everyone here is wrong, so let's just move on because we're now going around in circles.
So
okay,
true.
TV's mum's fat. Anyways, we've got another spicy topic which has been brought up recently, which is the Greater London Assembly, which is now getting done by Reba at the moment. I believe. Well, no, it's not, because if you look at what happened, what was it, yesterday, she released something in the government channel about opening these consultation. Yeah, here it is.
Oh, the consultation. Oh, that's not happening.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hold on. In the government channel, Reba Asta said, GLA consultation will begin tomorrow. Google Forms will be released for everyone to contribute to, and a new group of people will be convened by me to assist in drafting of the bill. Now, she was actually supposed to do it that weekend. That's what she said last week.
Yeah.
And now she's delayed it. And
where's the Google Form? I haven't seen it released.
I haven't seen it
well,
released.
I'm happy to tell you what happens inside the policy group. I was in there.
Anyways, yeah, and according to the former Deputy Prime Minister, now leader of the opposition, Marcus, Reba actually hasn't came online since last night.
She doesn't even know this government's collapsed. She won't know until Saturday.
She probably doesn't know the government's collapsed.
That's why there's no replacement made. There's only 2 government ministers.
She's going to show up on like Friday, think, oh, okay, PMQ's all right. Let me just quickly catch up on what's happened.
Well, she was.
Oh
she
my
wasn't
god!
Last Friday. She won't be on that. She won't be on Friday. She wasn't on last
Friday.
Friday.
Be on the Saturday, but it should be out of job by then.
Six ministers of mine are voting against me. Oh God, how have I not done this? And then she'll just blame her chief whip.
She'll have resign. She'll have to be forced to go.
All right then. Well, you know what, TBU, since you are the, I guess the father of the Greater London Assembly thing, what do you think about this? What do you think? Greater London Assembly, should it open now, or do you think it should only open when Northminster comes out?
Look, my idea when I first drafted the bill was, to get London representation. That was what my main goal always was, and always will continue to be. I had to, by the end of my term as Prime Minister, force it right at the end, and I was hoping my successor would then take on the bill, which they didn't. Ben wasn't interested in it, and he kind of got neglected from there, but that was his own choice, and I completely respect that. So I was excited to see that Reba was going to work with me and a few other ministers within the government to work on a new proposal, which I was happy to do. But, little to none progress was made within that. There was ideas flung around. They were saying, oh, I'll get a bill to you for the weekend. There wasn't a bill. I was really excited to work on this and get something delivered, because it's something I believe is probably a really great step forward, getting a London Assembly out there. Obviously my first choice was for Scotland for some kind of representation, but at the time this isn't possible, and we're always looking at options to that. But I'm really passionate about Great London Assembly, so I'm a bit disappointed that it hasn't progressed and Reba hasn't really done anything with it as of yet, and she won't, because she'll be out of government. But I hope it does get continued forward. It's a great idea. It's a great way to get people from maybe Westbridge or Northminster involved. And your second point was, should it wait till Northminster? Maybe. It's a good proposal, but I think you can honestly get started with Westbridge. You need to get a solid foundation before you can, branch out.
All right then. Well, thank you very much, TBU, for that. Does anyone else have anything to say on this Greater London Assembly initiative by Reba?
Yeah, I actually
well,
do.
It's Reba, so it'll not be done, so that's pretty much it. It's just a fantasy.
It's not going to get done.
Look, in the
it's good to
hypothetical
have
scenario,
dreams, Jamie. It's good to have dreams.
In the hypothetical scenario, though, that it does get done. I'm on the national executive of Reclaim, and I can say we are fielding candidates for it internally. So whatever election occurs, and if whether it be in 2 months' time or as soon as Rebus says it will be, I doubt that'll happen. But if it is, then of course we will win that election, and Labour and the Tories, and I don't know, will the Progressives field candidate, but both of the establishment parties will cry and seethe and cope. So that's all I have to add.
Jamie, did you want to say anything?
What were we talking about there? The same thing? The Great London
Yeah, we're
Authority?
talking about the Greater
Yeah.
London Assembly.
Well, it's Rebus, so it'll not be done, so.
All right then. Well, yeah, I guess it's definitely not going to be done. Reba's definitely has disappeared. Let me just quickly check if Reba Asta is on, and she is not on. So yeah, that's no surprise there. I wonder what everyone's thinking in her government at the moment. It's just.
Well, Mason's still sitting there defending it, even though
Mason is still defending it.
Mason said yesterday that that the Conservatives were not putting in all of the work. That Reba was doing the bare fruit of it. But look at it now. Nearly a day on. It's a day on
Yeah,
now.
nearly a day on, and nothing
has been done
happened.
since.
I have to say, look, if anything, Mason's loyalty is impressive at best.
It's commendable.
I mean, it is commendable.
It is
I mean,
admirable,
I would have
but
resigned.
Exactly, and I think, but we're still in agreement that this whole mess is because of Mason. We'll leave it at that.
He can't control it. I don't think you understand. Being ginger is perhaps the biggest neurodivergence you can ever have in Great Britain. So I'm sure he's at home receiving treatment for that gingeritis.
All right, yeah, exactly. All right, then. Well, we're gonna move on to just one last topic, which is the banning of DM campaigning. Now, we've seen parties come and go about supporting this ban on DM campaigning. I think the last time, was it Progressives? Do the Progressives currently support it, Jamie?
We currently support banning it, yes.
And so last time a party did support it was the Voice Party. They were very known for banning DM campaigning. What's your argument for banning DM campaigning then, Jamie?
Well, you see, DM campaigning is really sort of useless, to be honest. Everyone goes and do not DM campaign, so that just limits immediately who you can DM. You can't DM specifically through to business owners because they might have DM campaigning on. So you can't go through the Treasury Service. You can't go through Justice because they might have DM campaigning on. You can't go through private sector businesses or TFL because they might have it on. You have to campaign through the Discord server, so you don't actually know what they stand for, what they want to hear. So it's really difficult to do it. And it's really just, really everybody hates it. Everybody hates receiving the DMs. Nobody likes it.
Oh.
And I want the media sector to have a bigger say on sort of, sort of how people swing their votes. We've seen GB News, they're sort of very centralized. They're run by, people from different sides of the house or people who are just completely independent at all. So, with that sort of coming back to life, it just makes sense to sort of have the media sort of have a bigger swing.
Anyone else here? What does anyone else have to say about this?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is more ridiculousness coming from the Progressive Party here.
You just want change. You just want the status quo, and it's killing everyone. It's killing everyone.
DM campaigning is single-handedly.
Claim is about get rid of the status quo.
I'm being no. The status quo is not DM campaigning. The status quo is people like Reba Astor. I'm not sure why we're changing the subject.
Quo in sort of elections in Parliament. That is what
No,
we are not speaking about this term in particular.
You're trying to change the electoral system.
We are talking about the biggest electoral change ever, and you are just sitting there rejecting all of it. Well, what do you want to see change? What do you want to see change? Come on.
Nothing. I think the current way elections are held by Sanguis F. Drucker are actually quite consistent. They're really well run.
Right, but that's not what we're on about. It doesn't matter how elections are held. We're on about electoral change, not how elections are run.
Look, with respect, I didn't interrupt you, so I'm not sure why the Northern Irishman is interrupting me. Seriously, the way we're running elections now is not creating change. I don't understand why we're so anti-electoral commission here when literally they're not the problem. The issue here is obviously Reclaim. And DM campaigning is single-handedly the greatest way to activate and engage the electorate. So I'm not sure why we're acting as though it's not a proponent of change here when it is. And I know everyone, I suppose you say, quote unquote, everyone goes on do not DM. Well then, how are people winning elections? How is DNC Mark actively DM campaigning and winning these huge elections? That makes no sense. I mean, the math isn't mathing right now for the Progressives.
Because you're not thinking it from my perspective. You're thinking it from oh, DM campaigning, we can just spam as many people as we want. We want to see real change. We want to actually make people
Okay, let's
sort
talk
of
about change.
involved.
Let's talk about change. The Netherlands banned DM campaigning, and politics has never been more dead. I've never seen it more under the grave, 6 feet under. That's embarrassing. Do you want
That's
that
the
for the United
Netherlands.
Kingdom?
This is the UK. UK is bigger than the Netherlands, I'm nearly sure.
So why do you want to ban DM campaigning?
Because everybody hates it. It's really difficult to get your points across. Because it's whoever gets there first, and because you can't specify.
You're wrong, by the way.
Well, no,
I
you
just have
can
to
because you
interrupt,
can't
by the way.
specify your policies directly to somebody who
No,
might
the
be
Netherlands.
interested in it.
No, you're wrong on calling the
No,
Netherlands
because you
more
can't
dead.
go through the HM
Netherlands had
Treasury server because somebody
85.
might have do not DM campaign on.
Antillum had
I mean,
80
look, if you're
fires.
going to speak too fast, nobody can understand you, okay?
Well, you see, Salient, because you can't go through the HM Treasury server to campaign about business because they might have do not DM campaign on, and then by that case,
No.
if you try doing that, Emil Mannerheim did that, and he got
No.
DM campaign suspended and votes deducted, and I think that was really
You're acting
unfair.
as though the UK is any different to the Netherlands situation. Den Antillum had 85 players average on game, and Westbridge is about 60. So you're completely wrong in that issue here.
But not everybody plays Westbridge in the UK.
Okay, so
Because
I
Westbridge
don't
is
know
an
what you're
awful
saying here,
game,
but so you're
whereas
just
the
admitting
Netherlands
it's
game is
less
actually
active.
good.
So you're just saying it's less active. Banning DM campaigning is going to kill politics. You're
No,
not
it won't.
facing the fact
It's not.
the music is in
It's
front
not
of you.
because
Face
if you look at
the
it's not because if you look in the sort of Discord servers, they are all at 100 plus members. We're not on about banning DM campaigning through on your own Discord server because that is just a reminder of the vote. We are on about campaigning to people outside of your server to get them into your server. That is what we're banning. You can still remind everyone
I'm
to
sorry,
vote.
but the math is just not mathing here. Like
Well, no,
DM
it is
campaigning is
nothing.
still
You're just not
engaging.
understanding.
No, DM campaigning is still engaging the electorate. I don't understand why you're just going to remove it from one server. I don't understand this. This is simply, it's just completely preposterous here. I don't know why.
What you're not understanding. You're not understanding my point. That's the issue. I
Yeah,
want to have bigger things. There's other ways of campaigning. I want them to be bigger than DM campaigning. In-game campaigning, for example, it's a great way. It's a great way to stay engaged with people in game.
That is still a huge method of campaigning.
It
It's
is
just
a huge
not as
method of campaigning,
recorded.
but
It is.
DM
It's just
campaigning
not as
heavily
recorded.
outweighs that,
No,
and it's unfair.
no, you're right. You're right. It absolutely
you
does.
know
But
what?
it's
You know what? I think I'm just going to have to interject here. It's definitely going around in circles, and I don't think
Yeah.
TBU has been given a chance to speak.
Shocking,
TBU,
isn't it?
before your mum comes back into your room to slap you again, what do you think about this?
I don't know what your obsession is here, Michael, but anyway.
TBU, look, we don't have time for this, okay? Let's just move on.
Right, fine.
All right, you know what?
I
No,
think-
fine. We're not even going to ask you for your opinion. Let's just go to the closing credits. No, I'm joking, TBU. You can continue.
This is racism, Michael. Okay, so I think DM campaigning has outlived its purpose. But I mean, as Jamie says, fact is, everyone's on Do Not DM anyway. Back in the day, back in 2021, 2022, you could, DM people feasibly and, get a response. But nowadays, you're not going to get far with it. I think there are definitely better ways to campaign. In game, to the voters directly, people in your server, and actually using the media. We're seeing companies expand their broadcasting, expand their journalism, especially the tabloid sector, get interviews in there, interact in there, show, get a good campaign going. Geniuses like DNC Mark, they created these ads that really resonate with people. They were short, they were quick, they were effective. That's how people voted for the Conservatives because they thought, that's a really good ad. It gets to the point, that's what they'll do, and that's how they'll win. The answer is not to continue DM campaign. It's an outlived form of, messaging. No one wants to do it. Wants to do it anyway. So, keep campaigners
Discord
motivated.
limits heavily how many people you can DM now, and you have to do a capture for every time.
So
it's just
it's
significantly
pointless.
harder anyway.
if is there a rebuttal allowed or?
You can, I guess, but let's just not go around in circles.
Well, look, you talked about, I suppose, DM campaigning, being overused or tired. Well, it's a reason we're still using DM campaigning because it engages the electorate.
Because it isn't banned, everybody has to use it.
It doesn't.
That's why if we ban it, there's no more DM campaigning.
Okay, I have a serious question. No, I have a serious question. If there are better methods of campaigning, why is DM campaigning the most popular?
Because
it's not the most popular. I hate getting DM.
Everybody hates it, but it's just a great way to sort of campaign to people who might not have a
Thank you very much, SLP. It is a great way to campaign. It is the most way to actively engage the electorate. Thank you so much. I rest my case here. I mean, he's decided
okay, well, you know what? Let's just admit that all three of you are bitches, and let's just go to the closing credits. Okay, all right then. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight on the Michael Show. I'd like to thank my guests, the British Union, who's famous for that, Jamie, and
You actually
Killian.
stop. This is an obsession.
All right then. Thank you very much for everyone that's watching, and this is the Michael Show. Goodbye.